Many thanks for the Arunachal Ashrama, New York, and Mohanji for bestowing this honor again on me to give a talk on Ramana Maharshi's teachings this year as well, like last year. Last year I took up the same subject and also the same book that I have chosen to speak about this year also. The book is pretty big, and uh, last year we could cover only a very small part, and this year also it will be only a very small part. And the book is Padamalai. Padamalai is a composition originally in Tamil by the great Tamil poet and one of the close disciples of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. So that book is, the translation is by David Godman, who has translated many works of Ramana Maharshi. So Muruganar was very close to Ramana Maharshi and had taken him as his guru, guide, spiritual leader, and had merged his ego completely uh, in his guru, chosen ideal, Ramana Maharshi. So it is said that Muruganar is widely regarded as being one of the most eminent and influential of Ramana Maharshi's devotees. He was instrumental in persuading Bhagavan to compose both uh, Ullandu Narpadu and Upadesha Undiya, two of his most important philosophical works. And he also recorded and rendered into Tamil verse some of Bhagwan's spoken teachings. Over 800 of these verses were published under the title Guru Vachaka Kovai. So we shall have some of these Guru Vachaka Kovai quoted while I am giving this talk. These are not writings of Ramana Maharshi, but what he said in conversation, in reply to questions, that has been collected here by Murugan and presented in some are exact his words, Raman Maharshi's words. So they have been mentioned by this Muruganar with at the ending as N Padam. N Padam means these are direct quotes from Padam. But other things there also, although they don't have this mark N Padam, still are his teachings, Maharshi's teachings, and have been seen by others also that yes, this is what Maharshi had said to some others as well. So these are very comprehensive and have been arranged uh, according to topics by the translator. The translator has not taken entire volume of the Padamalai, but only a very significant part, a smaller part. And about Muruganar, it is said that uh, as he came to see Bhagwan's power and grace on his very first meeting, and now I am quoting from the book, in the same way that wax melts On encountering fire, on seeing his feet, my mind dissolved and lost its form. Like the calf finding its mother, my heart melted and rejoiced in his feet. The hairs of my body stood on end. Devotion surged in me like an ocean that has been the full moon, that has seen the full moon. Through the grace of Chit Shakti, the power inherent in consciousness, my soul was in ecstasy. So, this is how Muruganar's connection with Ramana Maharshi. So, therefore, he took these teachings, absorbed them, put them in his life, and then worked to uh, present it to the people in his tremendous skills as a poet in Tamil. Now, we shall take up in the allocated 1 hour time just a few teachings. Uh, the main import that we see in Bhagavan's various discussions and his writing that can be termed as self-inquiry. All the problems, when the problems are presented to him, he would say, who has this problem? Who is struggling with desires? Who? Try to ask this question, who? And then this self-inquiry will remove those things. For example, the desires. Who has the desires? The inert body, bones, they cannot have desires. And so, if you see that you are not body, the desires will disappear. This self is to be realized. This is a very famous statement in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, in the discussion between Yajnavalkya and Maitreyi, that this Atman, being the dearest one, Atma vai are drashtavya, because it is the dearest one. We should go for that which is dearest to our heart ever, always. Other things in the world, they are dear to us one moment, not dear to us on some other occasion, in other circumstances. But the self is dear to us all the time, in all circumstances. And therefore, the self is the dearest one. The Atman is the dearest one. And so, one must strive to experience the Atman. It is so the question was asked, how is one to think of the self? And the answer is uh, typical of the style of Ramana Maharshi. This self is self-luminous, without darkness and light, and is the reality which is self-manifest. Therefore, one should not think of it as this or that. The very thought of thinking will end in bondage. A very important idea. The very thought about the self is something else that ends us in bondage. So uh, the purport of meditation on the self is to make the mind take the form of the self. In the middle of the heart cave, the pure Brahman is directly manifest as the self in the form I. Can there be greater ignorance than to think of it as in manifold ways without knowing it as aforementioned? This is the import that we must see, that self is not a particular object to think about. That is our very subject, our innermost reality. Let us think about Maharshi's life before he became known as Maharshi. That incident when he was just 17 years old or so, and he got that experience of death and saw that the death is of body. I am not the body. And it is like the experience of the innermost self, different from all that changes, all that is subject to death. Death is the name of change. Whatever changes means the earlier thing is dead, the new thing has appeared. So, uh, death is the change that occurs, keeps on occurring. And therefore, as Maharshi saw when he was just 17, that yes, I am not dying. Who dies? That which changes. And its death cannot be prevented because it is the change that we call body. So, body and mind, they are subject to change and they come and go, they are born and they die. But I am above that. So, with this realization, now being established in that due to concentrated sadhana for many decades, he is able to see how various people of different bent of mind, they in a way know the self but try to identify it with that which changes and therefore have a problem about it. So he says that that is how thinking of the self is to abide as that tranquil consciousness, Padam. Here in Muruganar's works, Padam is Maharshi himself. Padam also means the highest state, God. Like in Kathopanishad and other places, we read Padam means God. Padam also means feet. That it is because that is how the feet of God are considered the highest feet of Guru, feet of God. So Padam. So that is the highest state also is called Padam. That which is to be Tat Padam Parimargitavyam, as it is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, that highest reality, the goal, that is to be, the path to that is to be traversed on. So this is what Bhagavan says here, that thinking of the self is to abide as that tranquil consciousness, Padam. The true Swarupa can neither be remembered nor forgotten. Because that which is connected with mind, that comes to memory, we remember it. And that which doesn't come to mind, we forget it. So it cannot be remembered or forgotten. A very important statement that it cannot be remembered, cannot be forgotten. For today's this talk, I am going to focus more on this idea of sadhana because it is here that most people struggle. Most of us can think very nicely. Very deep thinking is possible for us, but then that thinking has to be converted into practical experience. And this is the what is understood by the term sadhana. Sadhana, the spiritual practice, is where whatever we know, understand, we start moving towards that. like on the GPS, when we drive, we put the destination, that here we want to go. And then the directions are given, that okay, after 30 miles, take this exit on your right, and so forth. So the directions are towards, as we go, it leads us to the destination, and then it says stop. Now you have arrived, and now the journey is over, we have reached the destination. So sadhana is that it takes us from wherever we are, hmm, from wherever we are, and then leads us to that goal of life. And this is what everyone should do. So, the important and more pervasive aspect of religious life, spiritual life, is to get engaged in sadhana, the practice. And this practice actually constitutes mostly uh, giving up that which we take as real. And that is they called renunciation. Renunciation means not giving up that which is real, but that which is erroneously perceived as real, that has to be given up. And the reality is there. We don't have to import it or order it on Amazon or anything. Reality is there. Only the unreal ideas about it are to be given up. That is how, by getting into the unreal things, taking them to be real, we get bound. So, renunciation of that is important. So, this is in Padamalai, you find in this uh, uh, chapter on individual identity. It is this, we feel we are all separate, that even if I transcend the body and mind, we feel that the separateness may get retained, and we want to hold on to that. And our idea of liberation also is like that, and which is a big error. One identifies like somebody is put in prison, so that person would think that, yes, I am in prison, and I have been put there, I have been sentenced for 3 years. After 3 years, I will walk a free man. So that is the idea, bondage and freedom. So in spiritual life also, we superimpose that kind of idea, that I am now bound. And then after performing all these spiritual practices or sadhana, I will become free. I am bound and I will become free. No, this erroneous idea of I, individual identity, that itself is bondage. That needs, therefore, to be given up. That is the essential aspect of what we call sadhana. So, here are these some of these points here given by Raman Maharshi, that renunciation of individual identity. The best kind of renunciation is remembering in the state in which the mind holds extremely tightly to the Swarupa, means the true nature. Hold on to the true nature of yours, and that is renunciation, so that nothing else can be held on to. When you tightly hold on to something, then that's it, you cannot hold anything more, anything different. So thus when we hold on to our true nature, and there is nothing else that we are gripping on to. So, this is the nature of renunciation that is taught in Vedanta. You can see how Swami Vivekananda also expounds it in his very beautiful, great book, Jnana Yoga, that the renunciation that Vedanta teaches is not a dry renunciation, but hold on to God. Hold on to that which is real. Don't hold on to anything else but that which is real. It is knowing one's real nature, the abiding truth, is merely renouncing one's infatuation for the triputis that veil it. The veiling of this triputi means this triad of the subject, object, and subject object relationship. This is to be given up, and then the self manifests on its own accord, because it is luminous, it manifests. So if you attain perfect mastery of internal renunciation, external renunciation will have no importance. So, the wording is very beautiful here, that if you attain perfect mastery of internal renunciation, uh, external renunciation will have no importance. What it means is that if you have not perfect mastery of internal renunciation, then external renunciation will have importance. That external renunciation will, with proper attitude about it, lead to the internal renunciation. Internal renunciation is renunciation of the ego, whereas external renunciation is giving up possessions. So, just by giving up possessions, we don't renounce anything as such. So, it is the former that results in enlightenment, that the internal renunciation that results in enlightenment. External renunciation is only, it can become an aid to internal renunciation if practiced properly. Now here is the words of Bhagavan. He, the king, that it is there is the story that the uh, king uh, Sikhi Sikhi Vidwaja. So Sikhi Vidwaja, who unnecessarily gave up his kingdom and retired to the forest to seek enlightenment. So that king uh, Sikhidwaja, he thought that going into forest will bring renunciation. Many of us have that idea that I cannot meditate here. Let me go to forest. Let me go to Himalayas, or let me go to Arunachala. Uh, then the renunciation or sadhana, illumination can be possible. So that could happen provided there is this spirit of renunciation in the true sense that I have to give up my individual identity. Bhagavan says that he had vairagya, non-attachment, even while ruling his kingdom, and could have realized this self if he had only pushed his vairagya to the point of killing the ego. He did not do it, but came to forest, had a timetable of tapas, and yet did not improve even after 18 years of tapas. He had made himself a victim of his own creation. So this is the mistake that this king did, and many I find commit the same mistake, that going somewhere, giving up what wherever you are and whatever works you are doing. So going somewhere doesn't make you give up the ego, because you are carrying it there. You do not give it up. You can give up the kingdom, but then you are carrying your ego in the forest. That same thing will happen in forest. So therefore, it is that vairagya accompanied by ego is of no value. The dispassion or renunciation, which is that ego is still there, then it is not going to help. So this is to be remembered. In Ishavasyopanishad, the word renunciation comes in the very first verse, which means that yes, hold on to God, that is renunciation. Ishavasyamidam sarvam yatkincha jagatyaham jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitha magridha kasyasvidhanam. Hmm? Have this awareness that God is everywhere, in everything. Become aware of God, and thus you will lose the awareness or the value in your awareness to various forms. So that is called renunciation, and that is what by that you will be able to hold on to your spiritual aspirations. So this is uh, everywhere you will find that in Vedantic teachings from all seers and sages, that the idea is to give up this ego. At another place, Maharshi says that what you talk about realization of Atman, it is Atman is real. What has happened is you have realized all unreal things, and then therefore those reality ascribed to those things is to be given up. That unreal things have been realized, like a house, my house. Now it is not yours, my body is not mine, but we have, these things are not real, and yet we realize them. So to efface that is what is called realization of Atman. But Atman is real. You don't have to realize it, one has to experience it. The word realization of the self is to be understood in this light, that you are not making it real, it is real all the time. That is the reality. But we have to kick out that idea of other things being real. So nothing is real, Atman alone is real. So it is, one question is being asked here in his advice on sadhana. Is renunciation necessary for self realization? And Bhagwan's answer is renunciation and realization are same. It is, oh, that is how. They are not two things. Renunciation is realization. And give up the ego and you are God. Hmm. I love that beautiful Sufi saying, न होती खुदी तो मैं खुदा ही तो था. Khudi means this feeling of I. Khuda means God. Had there been no that I am so and so, that individual holding on to individuality, and then I am God. So renunciation of that is this realization of God. They are the same thing. They are different aspects of the same state. Giving up the non-self is renunciation. In hearing, the self is jnana or self-realization. One is the negative and the other the positive aspect of the same single truth. Here one is reminded of the that beautiful verse in Kathopanishad. Yada sarve pramuchyante kama yesya hridishritaha ath martyo mruto bhavati atra brahma samashnute. That when, or let us say that it is not a time thing. We have to use the language, and so we use now, then, when, etc. As the necessary problems that come when we use language. But these are the two simultaneous things that yada sarve pramuchyante kama yes hridishritaha, all the desires and in the mind, when they are given up, then what? Then it is athamartyo mruto bhavati. Now you are the unchanging self. Atra Brahma samashnute. And that is Brahman. Mm, what a beautiful and practicable idea. Practical and practicable. That as we don't have desire, I am Brahman. Desires, I am bound individual. So that is how the freedom, liberation, ultimate bliss we get by giving up this clutching to the false individuality. So, and the desires that come out of it. So, giving up desires is equivalent or identical by of with realization of Brahman. So it is uh, this teaching continues in this way. There is we shall move that, uh, and here a question is asked about Hatha Yoga. It is a forced yoga or yogic accomplishments sustained by effort. What is that? His opinion was asked about that. Again, people often ask how the mind is controlled. I say to them, show me the mind and then you will know what to do. The fact is that the mind is only a bundle of thoughts. How can you extinguish it by thought of doing so or by a desire? Your thoughts and desires are part and parcel of the mind. The mind is simply fattened by new thoughts rising up. Therefore, it is foolish to attempt to kill the mind by means of mind. The only way of doing it is to find the source and hold on to it. The mind will then fade away of its own accord. Yoga teaches chitta vritti nirodha. But I say, Atma Vichara, self investigation, this is the practical way. Chitta Vritti Nirodha is brought about in sleep, swoon, or by starvation. As soon as the cause is withdrawn, there is uh, recurrence of thoughts. Of what use it is then? It is so they remove all thoughts from the mind. Then the mind becomes no mind. It is that is just to give an analogy. If you have say a steel pot, pot made of steel and say, hey, remove all this steel, then where is the pot? Gaudapada in his Mandukya Karikas has brought out this point that the mind is the bundle of thought as it is mentioned here. That therefore the mind becomes no mind. Manaso amani bhave. And then what happens when mind becomes non-mind? Dvaitam naivopalabhyate. The duality that is not experienced then. It is, and therefore, by putting thoughts, you cannot uh, make the mind get clean or remove the bondage that is like that. So, uh, there are, he further proceeds there that the true consciousness of the unique Supreme will not become fixed and constant merely by thinking about it, but only when the degraded delusion uh, that of I ceases. Why do you suffer thinking I? If you remain still as the self, you will be bliss itself. It is I want to get peace. I want to get bliss. Now I want, if that removed I and want, then bliss alone remains. So that is what is to be done in our awareness. So uh, then there was a question here. I am not learned in the scriptures, and I find the method of self inquiry too hard for me. I am a woman with 7 children and a lot of household cares, and it leaves me little time for meditation. I request Bhagavan to give me some simpler and easier method. Mm. It is, and Bhagwan's answer is no learning or knowledge of scriptures is necessary to know the self. Mm. This uh, doesn't come by a lot of book readings. This Atman cannot be realized as the Kathopanishad, similar verses come in Mundak Upanishad also, that Naisha Tarkena Matirapaneya. It is, you cannot by the skills of logic or by na bahunashrutena. In other words, it is said that the Atman cannot be realized by reading a lot of scriptures. So, therefore, don't think that just because you do not know scriptures, you cannot realize God. That is a wrong idea. And Bhagwan illustrates all knowledge. Uh, all knowledge is required only to be given up uh, eventually as not non-self, nor is household work or cares with children necessarily an obstacle. If you can do nothing more, at least continue saying I to yourself mentally as advised in Who Am I? If one incessantly thinks, it will lead one to that state's self. Now, care has to be taken not to tie the I here, think of I, but not of body, not of mind, I, as a pure a pure awareness separate from getting polluted by bringing body and mind into it. So it is continue to repeat it, whatever work you may be doing, whether you are sitting, standing, or walking. I is the name of God. It is the first and the greatest of all mantras. Even Om is second to it. Atman, the I. Repeat that all the time. So, this is the realize that buddhi, vyabara, the vyapara, the intellectual activity, buddhi vyapara is also chitta vyapara, a mental activity. That it is, since it is a great obstacle, get rid of it completely. It is, then there is the other problem that comes up, that uh, that we started with discussing, that renunciation. Here comes again this question that uh, what is the true meaning of renunciation? Subjugation of lust, passion, greed, etc., is common to all and forms of essential preliminary step for any course. The, does not freedom from passions indicate renunciation? A good question here. A very nice question, that the freedom from all passions indicate renunciation. Yes, but there is, Maharshi says that answer, you have said it all. Your question contains the answer also. Freedom from all passions is the essential prerequisite. It is a prerequisite. When that is accomplished, all else is accomplished. This is, and then he continued, that question is asked again, how am I to deal with my passions? Am I to check them or satisfy them? If I follow Bhagavan's method and ask, to whom are these passions? They do not seem to die but grow stronger. It is, the experience is quite common with people, that when you dwell these passions, I am not that. While saying that, I am not that, we are again and again thinking of the passions only, less of I, but more of passions. And therefore, that doesn't work. That only shows Bhagwan's answer. That only shows you are not going about my method properly. The right way is to find out the root of all passions, the source whence they proceed, and get rid of that. If you check the passions, they may get suppressed for the moment, but will appear again. If you satisfy them, they will be satisfied only for the moment and will again crave satisfaction. Satisfying desires and thereby trying to root them out is like trying to quench the fire by pouring gasoline over it. The only way is to find the root of desire and thus remove it. So, find where the desires come from. It is a question of very deep psychology, that the desires arise. There is a source from which they arise. And what is that? This I, individual separate from the world. There is this duality, I and the world. And now that I runs after the world. And that is the cause of all passions. It is inherently the correcting the mistake of separation. but in the wrong manner. That when we run after the desires uh, or the passions, what happens? I want to grab something, get something, appropriate something, so that the duality between I and that object is removed. It is a search for oneness gone wrong. It is in this manner you can never get rid of passions, that they further, because there are infinitely many objects, and by appropriating that something, some other object, to me the I still remains, world still remains, and you go on running after it. And in Aitareya Upanishad, this is very beautifully shown, that the ignorant eye sees the food when this uh, in ignorance the separation happens, I and world. Now this separate I thus looks upon the world as food and starts chasing it, and the food keeps on running ahead of it. First the eye tries to catch it by hearing, by the ear, but cannot catch it, and therefore it is said even now that only hearing about food does not satisfy a person. Mm, Then just tries to catch it by eye. That also is not successful. Therefore, now also, even after seeing the food, we are not satisfied. And then what he did, he used the technical term is there, apana, means putting something in the mouth and in the system, that is called the apana vayu. So prana, apana, and all that that goes downwards is called apana. So using the apana vayu, this fellow caught the food and put it in, and thought that now I am satisfied. But the again sees that the food running ahead of him. So this is not the method, but the method is to see that all this is the same one reality, same oneself. So this is being asked, if you drive out and eliminate the demons of desire and so on, what then becomes of one? You with you is the treasure house of liberation. That it is when these demons of desires are gone, then you are the bliss. Uh, in that regard, a question was posed: what is the best way of dealing with desires with a view to getting rid of them, satisfying them, or suppressing them? We know only these two ways: either suppress them or satisfy them. Both are wrong. If a desire can be gotten rid of by satisfying it, there will be no harm in satisfying such a desire. But desires generally are not eradicated by satisfaction. Means by trying to fulfill that desire, and we will never be able to fulfill the desire. It will keep on coming again and again with renewed force. So, trying to root them out that way is like pouring the gas to quench the fire. At the same time, the proper remedy is not forcible suppression, since such repression is bound to react sooner or later into forceful surging up with undesirable consequences. The proper way to get rid of a desire is to find out who gets the desires. This is the method of self inquiry. Who gets the desires? Hmm? What is its source? When this is found out, the desire is rooted out and it will never again emerge or grow. Now comes to the desires that are there for the sustenance of our physical body. Uh, Maharshi comes to those small desires, such as the desire to eat, drink, and sleep, and attend to calls of nature, though these may also be classed among desires, you can safely satisfy them, as food is necessary for sustenance of the body. It is answering the call of nature is necessary for our sustenance. It is very important and do that. But then desire to eat food is one thing, but I like this food. I like gulab jam, and so I shall run for it. I like ice cream, let me go for it. And now this is not the desire just for the food. It is much more than that. That will entangle us. That will create bondage for us. So it is but other things you cannot call them uh, as, as vasanas, necessitating further birth. Those activities are just necessary to carry on life and are not likely to develop or leave behind vasanas or tendencies. As a general rule, therefore, there is no harm in satisfying a desire where the satisfaction will not lead to further desires by creating vasanas in mind. So, this is the difference that if you desire for the body to continue to do the work, that is okay. But uh, to enhance it to further levels, to have the choices about it, that will create bondage. The vision of the self will only be encountered by those who are free from delusion and desires, and not by those whose corrupted minds are full of desires for sense objects. And then there is the quote from this Guru Vachaka Kovai, that collection of by this poet, that in Tamil it is this. There are these verses. So Muruganar's this book is has this name, Guru Vachaka Kovai. Verse number 49 says, the non dual experience will only be attained by those who have completely given up desires. For those with desires, it is extremely far away. Hence, it is proper for those with desires to direct their desires towards God, who is desireless, so that through desire for God, their deluding desires become extinct. This is the method that has to be followed. It is the problem with our desires, why they keep on reappearing, even if we satisfy those. The reason is that they are not our real desires. Those objects are not real, and therefore they come again and again. To give an analogy, that if you say, look yourself into the mirror and see there is a smudge on the cheek, and then you try to wipe it out on the mirror. because it is seen on the mirror. So you take a wipe and then rub the mirror. No, it doesn't go away. It reappears. You thought that you rubbed it. No, it is still there. So these desires like that never die because they are actually not real objects. They desire for the real one. That can be satisfied. This is described by the Shankaracharya in his commentary on Chandogya Upanishad, where this beautiful verse comes that it is the Atma is Satyakama. The self is Satyakama, and Shankara says there that it is called Satyakama because the desire for that alone can be fulfilled, becomes Satya. And so, therefore, as Bhagavan says here, direct all the desires towards God. Sri Ramakrishna also advocated this method that you have desires for various things, turn them to God. In Bengali, he used to say, Mod Ghuriye Dao, that turn their direction towards that which is real rather than the desires for that which is unreal. The book has, so many wonderful things here about renunciation, giving up the desires. But I am being told by the clock in front of me that my time for this today is very privileged and honored, offered for me to give a talk on Ramana Maharshi's teachings. So I will stop here with the prayers. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityormam Amritam Gamaya. Lead us from the unreal to the real, from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, and from this limited existence, mortal existence, to the true immortal existence. I again thank Mr. Mohanji and all others who have been instrumental in arranging these programs today, for giving me also an opportunity. Thank you very much. Jai Sri Ramakrishna.